السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم. It's a great pleasure and an honor to facilitate tonight's book talk with the author himself, our very own scholar in residence, Dr. TAREK ELGAWHARY. It's actually my favorite of your books. And this is why I insisted and asked him if he could do tonight's event, and alhamdulillah, he kindly obliged us. I think it's a must read for every person, if not every Muslim, to read. And the reason is that usually in most genres, there's one book and then there's another book. And if you don't read one, then you read a different one, right? I mean, there are hundreds of tafasir, right? So you pick the one that you like the most. But this book, Gate to Medina, it's intersectional. It crosses a lot of different categories and it's genre defining, not defining, defying. So it doesn't fit into one box. And I think your talent is in that, in connecting different data points that seem unrelated and to create connections. So we want to have a conversation. We're going to open it up very soon to everybody to ask their questions. But first, we want to learn the basics about this work and Dr. Tarek's thought on Islamic civilization and the Islamic legacy and Islamology, of course. Now, I know in many cases you have mentioned how every book is personal and personal to you. So before we even get into the book itself, I'd like to know, and I think we'd all like to know, what motivated you to write? What was the inspiration for this book?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Can I just begin with the way I begin in the book? This will answer the question.
Yes.
Okay. This is the opening paragraph. It was a scene I witnessed hundreds of times. I would leave my Cairo flat in the Mohendesin suburb shortly after Fajr prayer and head towards the Azhar Mosque in the old part of the city, a drive that normally takes about 30 to 45 minutes. In the early morning, the city is surprisingly empty, but by the time I drive through the outer gates of the ancient seminary, the hustle and bustle starts. Just as the ambient sound of horns, people, markets, haggling, and the rest pick up, I quickly duck into the sanctuary of the mosque. The thick, high walls of the Azhar provide the needed shade from the Egyptian sun, especially in the summer months, and insulation against the sounds of the outside world. As the heat of the day increases, I, like so many of the other students, find relief in the shade. I greet the mosque with the customary 2 units of prayer, then sit against the wall and take out my books to review my lessons. The goal of this ritual is to wait. Wait for the Mufti glide. A short while later, and without any warning, Egypt's Grand Mufti emerges from one of the side entrances. There is no way to anticipate when this will happen. He simply appears and walks rapidly. His jurist's robe is without buttons, so it is swung open by the pace of his gait. It drops just beneath the ankle, but slightly above the floor. You cannot see his feet nor his knees as they bend when he walks. Like something out of fantasy, he simply glides swiftly from the entrance on one side of the mosque to the schoolhouse, Riwaq, on the other side where he teaches. Moths to a flame, the students encamped in the shaded area of the mosque quickly gather their books and run towards the Mufti, hoping to have the blessing of kissing his hand. There are so many of us that his hand remains extended as the students genuflect to kiss it. However, he remains stern with his glance firmly fixed in front of him, as if guiding his course and paying no attention to the supplicants. As quickly as he enters, so too does he duck into the Ottoman schoolhouse on the far side of the mosque and takes his place upon the teaching chair. He grabs the book placed next to him, opens it, and says, Assalamu alaikum. So this was, as I wrote, I mean, something I must have seen not just hundreds, but thousands of times. And it's very hard to express the feeling of being there and studying in that ambiance for so many years, so many hours, hundreds of thousands of hours, and all that I experienced in my journey to learn. But as I say in the beginning of the book, when I step out of that, I step into something else. So there was always this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I noticed that there was a difficulty in that. There was a difficulty within my family. There was a difficulty in my social circle. And, coming back to the States from time to time to do certain things, it was very hard. but it's still something that's, inside of me that I hold to very strongly. So I guess it's from that feeling that this book came to describe what was all of that about, those feelings. Of course, at the time they were just raw feelings, but hopefully I had a chance to lay out the argument in this book.
Alhamdulillah. Now, in the book, you talk about one of your inspirations that I'm going to point out, Pirsig and his book about Zen and the art of, I think, the art of the motorcycle.
Maintenance.
The maintenance.
Art of motorcycle maintenance.
Motorcycle maintenance is a very unusual title. And then he wrote another earlier book, Inquiry into Morals. And in one of your videos, you talk about a quote from that book, which I've never read. I've never read Inquiry into Morals, other than what you've mentioned, about philosophology. And this idea of this parasitic growth, this secondary field, people who analyze Islam from without, and kind of perhaps over-intellectualize things and don't appreciate it from within and what the meta values are. So what parallels did you find between that concept of philosophology and the term that you coined, I think you'd coined, Islamology? What makes Islamology incoherent?
Well, it started for me during the Arab Spring, and I was still finishing my PhD at Princeton. I finished I can't remember when I finished. I think it was 2014 or 2015. But so the Arab Spring was a little bit before that. So I was still in the academy. And I saw all of these professors that were in my field, people either at Princeton or beyond Princeton, Muslim and non-Muslim, commenting about what was happening, especially in Egypt. I was like, this is a joke. What are they saying? This is ridiculous. What they're saying is completely inaccurate. It's not correct. It's not a correct analysis. And I was like, I have skin in the game. I'm Egyptian. My family is there. We have, everything is riding on that for us. So when I would see this sort of comic, commentary, I started to realize, well, this is just an extension of the whole field. It's not just, it just took that incident for me to see it. And I just started realizing this whole academic inquiry into Islam in the West is just a form of fake Islam. It's sort of, couch, people are sitting on the couch kind of commenting on real events. And a lot of these people were my colleagues and they were my friends. And unfortunately, that we've since parted separate ways. I don't want to name any names, but it was a very, that's sad. And I realized that there was something there that I had not seen before, although it was always there, which is that this is not really the study of, it's not how I studied in Al-Azhar. When I studied in Al-Azhar, these are real issues. People are bringing real questions. Somebody brings a land deed in the village somewhere and somebody died and the mufti is giving them an answer. This has direct consequences right now for this family. Or somebody's going through a divorce or trying to get married, or somebody has a drug problem. All of these issues, there are real problems with real people, real consequences. Or even greater than that is, sighting the moon for Ramadan. 120 million people are going to fast based on the sighting of this moon. And they do that every month, not just in the month of Ramadan. And likewise for Eid. And, witnessing all of these what's the Sharia ruling of exporting natural gas to Israel? I mean, I was in Dar when that question was asked. And then I'm in Princeton, it's just all this nonsense. All of these theories and just empty talk, empty. A lot of it was good. I benefited, of course. I'm not saying that wasn't good, but it wasn't of consequence. So this idea of what's real versus not real. So for Islam, for me, is something real. It's something that I live every day with my family, with the community. So I'm not interested in just a theory about Islam. I'm interested in doing Islam. I'm interested in being a Muslim. So now that's all kind of was there in my heart somewhere, in my mind somewhere. And then I came across Pirsig, which is another really fate. I have a friend, a colleague she was in college at the same time as me. She moved to Pakistan after she graduated and she gave me all of her books. And I've had these books in my basement for over 20 years. And then I think there was a snowstorm and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go and I'm going to unpack them. So I unpacked them and there is Pirsig's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance that I've heard so much about. I was like, I guess I should read it. So that led me to the second book, Lila, Inquiry in Morals. And that's where I discovered this paragraph on philosophology, because Pirsig is also in a very similar way, although I can't compare myself to him. He is trying to say, no, this is real philosophy. This is real inquiry into aesthetics, into beauty, into knowledge, not this fake stuff that people are talking about. I was like, oh my God, that's the term I've been looking for, Islamology. And that's how I came to the term.
I love that you told us the story of the snowstorm because sometimes you say that you talk about the importance of reading wisely. And I always look forward to your annual post in which you have the giant, have you guys seen that with the giant stacks of book? And then I feel really inadequate because I don't even.
That's not my intention. My intention is to motivate us. It's not the quantity. I know it looks like it's about quantity, but I just want people to read. I want people to be engaged in the art of reading and learning and cutting so many years of your life by reading these great authors. Then if you read, spend a couple of months reading some Imam al-Ghazali, you have just benefited 1,000 years of history rather than having to redo it yourself. AI can't do that for you. So that's the point of it.
And, I have the bad habit of reading chapters and not reading cover to cover the way that you do. But you talk about reading wisely. I mean, what does that mean? Because a lot of people are working professionals, others are retirees, we have some youth that are gathered here. We don't all have a lot of time to devote to reading, so we actually need to be judicious in which books we select. What does it look like reading wisely?
So it's a hard question to answer because you don't want people to take what you say and be like this is it. But I can tell you what it's not, which is just reading what's popular or what's being pushed. And, if a book is being marketed heavily, it's probably not that good. That's been my experience. I mean, I followed modern authors and I've just stopped buying their books altogether, just so bad.
So we should just read Shelby Foote.
Well, we'll get to that. But for me, of course, my field is Islam and Islamic studies. So most of what I read is in that. So I have a particular order of the books that I read that are authoritative for me, either for my madhab or something that I'm researching. So I always try to find what are the greats, what we call the ummahat, what are the major books upon which other ones are based. So you're always safe by, if this book is, something that Imam al-Ghazali wrote is going to be consequential because all the 600-700 years after him, people are looking to Imam al-Ghazali. But when I have to read outside of my field, I tend to try to read things that either I need to know about or I'm interested about, also following the same pattern, what's authoritative. So when I wanted to read history, I realized that Edward Gibbon's The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire is the book. Now, it took him his whole life to write. It's 6 volumes. It's like 3,500 pages. It took me almost a whole year to read it, but I'm much better for spending the time to read it rather than reading a summary of or a modern book about ancient Rome. No, this guy was like in the Greek sources, the Latin sources. His footnotes are its own book. I mean, the amount of footnotes he has in the book. So that it's a struggle, but I think that it's worth the struggle because you push hard and then you come out and you're like, wow, this was very enriching.
So I'm going to ask a couple more questions and then we're going to open it up. So it's a chance for you to reflect on questions that you may have. Now, I'm going to point out the title, Gate to Medina, Regaining the Art of Islam. How does a religion have an art? I mean, is there an ethos that comes along with the Islamic civilization that allows us to claim art from all these far-fetched places? I mean, what is the common thread that brings all of it together?
I mean, for me, it's beauty. The Prophet ﷺ was beauty, and in the Islamic language, we refer to it as mercy. He is a mercy to mankind, but for me, they're kind of interchangeable. And there's something about how we feel when we're at our peak Islam, like, in Ramadan or, the night of the 27th or, a special program, or we feel something so special, so warm, so comforting, so familiar. And it's like we're always trying to go back to that feeling. And if art is defined as the communication of feeling, then I argue that the practicing of Islam, the way I talk about in the book, the practicing of true Islam is a way for us to communicate that beauty to others around us. So for me, the issue about how we got into this mess and where we need to go is we need to go back to Medina. In other words, we need to go back to this prophetic example of the Prophet ﷺ as an exemplar of beauty and of mercy. And it's this dual understanding of creativity and peak performance. So we know our Islam very well. And it also has to be buttressed by a very, very dedicated and deep spiritual practice. These are the two, the two sides or the two aspects to the gate to Medina.
Right. So as we say in Arabic, وَبِضِدِّهَا تَتَمَيَّزُ الْأَشْيَاء, things are known by their opposites. So, I do have to ask about the other side that you talk about in the first half of the book, about the ugly Islam, and the Islamology. Um, Now, I think many of us, we fall into that trap where when we think of this very puritanical Islam, we think of, the Wahhabi movement, for example. I'm saying that separately from Salafi movements, but for now, let's say Wahhabi movement, the original one. But what about other movements? What about some of the Sufi orders that are plagued with a similar type of rigidity? As you call goofy Sufis or fake Sufis. What about the perennialists? You talked about your education and exposure at Princeton, to some of the more academic study of Islam. Um, you didn't speak a lot about the political movements, but I'm also interested. What about those political reform movements or the progressive movements? Are they all within that ugly Islam? What defines that Islamology? What are the borders of that?
So, of course, the examples that I gave are just examples. It's not meant to be an exhaustive survey, and it's very negative as a writer just to keep thinking about the ugly and the negative. So I just wanted to give like a snapshot. But all of the things that you said are examples, are specific examples. I was trying to be more theoretic. Let me give you guys a theoretic understanding of like what political Islam looks like, what a fundamentalist Islam looks like. But of course, all of these, the problem with them is that they are using Islam or some of the language of Islam for another purpose. Whereas I want us to be using Islam for the purpose of transforming our lives and us submitting to Islam. The whole point of our religion is that we submit to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. So let's look at like political Islam or these political movements, whether they be sort of Islamist, Islamic political parties and Islamic political movements, or we look at the opposite, which is like, a liberal type of quote unquote secular movement. And they are all interested in using the political process for power, which was not the goal of Islam. Islam doesn't really have a say about the power structure, other than the power structure needs to be just. In the year of al-Wufud, Am al-Wufud, the year of the delegations, when the delegations came to the Prophet ﷺ, those tribes that became Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ never, in any of those hadith narrations, he never tells the people how to restructure their political life. All he's talking about is about you have to learn how to pray, you have to pay zakah, you have to fast. He'll send them somebody to teach them the Quran, but he never replaced it. He's like, oh, you have to have my guy. My guy's got to be the person in charge. So this is the idea of what I was talking about, high politics and low politics. The high politics is that there's an Islamic system in the sense that the Sharia is running because it's a Muslim majority context, but the details are left to the people. And then there are extremists, as you mentioned, amongst the Sufis as well, just like there are extremists amongst the Shia as well. The extremists amongst the Sufis are their direction is that they go outside of Islam by forgetting about the Sharia. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, there's this mystical thing that we're after. And once I get it, I don't really need this outer. This outer stuff is just a formality. I can take off that stuff. I don't need to pray anymore. I don't need to, I'm enlightened, and that's Shaitan's textbook one. It was like on the first page, like the first line of his textbook. Okay? He wants you to do that. So you start to, because it's really the most arrogant thing that you can say. I don't need this stuff. I don't need to worship Allah because I'm worshiping Allah. What does that mean? And they kind of go that way. And there's this movement in the Balkans. They're called like the Bektashi. Yeah. Okay. And it's like, I don't know, it's like a state within us. It's very weird. It's like tasawwuf without Islam, that kind of thing. And there's some of that in America. And then the extreme of the Shia, also it's a combination of messianism and the problem of politics, because it's almost impossible to discuss Islam with a person who's a Shiite today without there being in the immediate background some kind of political context because of Iran. And that's also very problematic, because I just want to talk about Islam qua Islam. As a Sunni, I want to engage with a Shia about those issues that are together that we can build unity of. But it's almost impossible because right behind anything you say, there is this idea, whether it's stated or not, that this is an ideal Islamic state. And therefore, my allegiance is to this ideal. Okay, you've lost everything I'm trying to talk about. There is no ideal state. It doesn't exist. After the Prophet ﷺ, even amongst the Sahaba, didn't exist. There were problems between the Sahaba. Politics is, there's no, if we want an ideal, situation, when we die, inshallah, we'll find that. But in this dunya, there's never going to be an ideal political. So that's a form of extremism or a form of political kind of camouflaging aspects of the religion. So all of these Islamologists, if you want to look at them as sort of what is the uniting feature, it's taking some parts of Islam, not all parts of Islam, taking those some parts of Islam to have them submit to something else that's in the mind, rather than me trying to find all of Islam and submitting to all of Islam and finding myself underneath that. That's the main difference, I would say.
I think that's a beautiful note for us to open up the discussion. If we have a microphone here as well. And those that are online, they can ask questions in the chat. Otherwise, you guys will be stuck with my questions.
I have a question. In one of the chapters, you talk about political activists, and you've also talked about this in your khutbahs, where you sort of say you have to take the high road, you have to stay away from the low road of politics. I'm paraphrasing. Could you elaborate on that? Because have you changed your mind on that? I mean, I'm not sure if you mean we shouldn't participate in politics. Should we?
So first, I make a distinction between high politics and low politics. High politics are the things that concern all of us as part of a political unit. Public safety, the level of like the Constitution, the level of the founding principles of a nation state or something like that. That concerns all of us. So on the 4th of July, as you know, every 4th of July, I'll give a khutbah that's directed towards the importance of those principles and that, and that we honor that day because it's the founding of the nation to which we belong and which allows us to be able to congregate in this space. Or, if we can remember back to COVID, that's something where all of us are concerned. So this is something where, as a religious leader, you have to engage with the authorities because it's something that concerns everybody. I just make a distinction between that and low politics or partisan politics. So there is no space for Islam or any religion in partisan politics. And the trend in this country on that score has been disastrous. All religious groups that engage with partisan politics have been co-opted by the political system. And then they cede their moral authority to these parties and these candidates. For us, that's haram. I mean, it's completely impermissible, because we cannot use religion as a way to divide people. And I cannot say, okay, this is the Muslim candidate, and I'm supporting him, I'm endorsing him as an imam or as a mufti or something like that. And therefore, what am I implicitly saying? The other person is not Muslim or not Islamic or the haram candidate or something. I can't do that. So I can't enter into that. And the best example that I can give is the sunnah of Ulysses S. Grant, who, as we know, is on the $50 bill. But our favorite denomination is Benjamin Franklin, by the way, from a donation point of view. So, but anyway, so Ulysses S. Grant, before he became president, he was the commander of the Union forces. And he was the only person since George Washington to be ranked a lieutenant general and one of the highest positions and greatest honors, and he won the war. But in 1865, which was in the midst of the Civil War, and it was looking like Lincoln was going to lose the election, and very hard for a nation to have an election in a civil war. Grant made it a point to say that he will not vote because he was in the employ of the United States government. So whoever is the person at the top, he has to follow that person's order. So this is, in our American context, of course, other places will have other contexts. This is the best example of what I mean by high politics and low politics. We have to be, in the name of Islam, in the service of the Republic. As individuals, you should engage, but don't engage with Islam. Don't say, I'm engaged with this party or this candidate because this is the Islamic candidate. And if you're engaged, don't bring this person to me because I will not allow this person to come into the masjid. Or else we'll have to bring all of the people. And there's going to be no endorsement or anything like that. That's what I mean. Engage in the political process, and we should, but engage as individuals or engage however you want to engage, not in the name of religion. That's the issue. Welcome, sir.
What I read that I want to see this book. Actually, I want to kind of rehash what you said about Islam, political engagement. I think, just to be clear, because when after people listen to the khutbah of political engagement, I think some of us, or many of us, can feel the way we should not be interested in politics. I think what we clarified is engage politics as citizen of the United States, but don't bring religion into it. Because if I like candidate, I like it for X, Y, and Z reasons, honesty, or whatever it is.
Sure, yeah.
So we should be encouraging them for all Americans, because we need as many Muslim voters as possible.
No, we have an obligation as citizens to engage in the political process by voting and being involved. All I'm saying is not in the name of religion. But for somebody like me, I can't even do that. So I don't vote. For the same reason that Grant didn't vote. You know, I don't want anyone to ask me who I voted for, and therefore I say this or that, so I don't vote. I'm not saying you shouldn't vote, but I'm saying I don't vote for this reason, because my role is a little bit different. And every time there's an election, I say that you should vote and you should be involved, but don't be involved in the name of religion. Like all of these other churches and synagogues and temples are involved, they are being co-opted and they are ceding their moral authority. They are ruining their religious fabric, but they're not aware of it. And this is very, very dangerous. And unfortunately, there are many Muslims that want to go down that path. And that's haram. Full stop.
Thank you. Okay. But I want to kind of rehang on that. But I have a couple of questions and comments, to be honest. I think as Muslims, so the United States and the world, we're pretty much not clear about the relation of Sharia to the our spiritual guidance or means of the Quran. So I want you to please, during the session, explain that a little bit more. How different it is, or how alike it is that we have to in religious terms. And secondly, I want to ask, you mentioned about extremity of Sufism and Shiism. How about the extremity of Sunnism? For example, Saudi Arabia is a Wahhabi, but it's a Sunni country. So if you can address this.
So the first question, the relationship between the Sharia and our spiritual well-being, is there can be no spiritual experience in Islam that doesn't stem from the Sharia. So the beginning journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us as individuals or collectively is by adhering to the Sharia, which is just another way of saying adhering to the Quran and the Sunnah. So you have to start with that. You can't have a out of Sharia spiritual experience. So that's something else. You're going to experience something else. But if you want real enlightenment, if you want what I'm talking about, the art of Islam, you have to follow the Quran and the Sunnah as a beginning point. So any legitimate spiritual practice in Islam comes from the Sharia. So therefore, making sure that we're compliant and we're following and practicing our Islam is of the utmost importance. As for the second question, I mean, first of all, the Sufis are Sunnis because usually there's no tasawwuf in Shia Islam, even though a little bit, but not typically. But I mean, you know, we could be here till tomorrow talking about about all of the extremists that come from Sunni Islams. But on the whole, over the last couple hundred years, it's been this fundamentalist sort of Salafi with a capital S approach, which seeks to undo traditional units of authority, like the Islamic schools of law or traditional theological schools of Sunni Islam, and try to make some kind of claim that they're all wrong and we're going to follow what is originally correct. So we're going to sidestep, over a millennia of tradition, and we're going to go back to some golden age and do it ourselves. That is extreme. And all of the modern extremist groups from Sunni Islam, they share that in common, that is the common denominator to their approach.
For my personal question, because in the Muslim community, we would say compliance to Sharia law. We live in the United States and of course Western Europe, wherever, with some democratic rules and principles. So how do you distinguish Sharia law, following a Sharia law, if you want to say, we cannot violate the US law. We have to follow the US law. How to become compliant and feel comfortable that we are in compliance with our Islamic value, as well as the law and rules of the country that we live.
Well, there's no contradiction because our Republican form of government has nothing to say on how we conduct ourselves privately. So how you're going to pray or use the bathroom or how we're going to get married, all of these things are left to us, and it's enshrined in the Constitution. So there's nothing wrong. I mean, we have the freedom to do that. On the macro level, as Muslims, we also have to obey the laws of the land in which we live, which is also part of the Sharia. So for us, there's no problem whatsoever. Walaikum salam.
Sharia on one place. Since you gave the introduction of the book, but we don't know the contents of the book. So is it possible that he take the Sharia or he took like hikmah in the halakha, so that he do that to answer questions to you or like we understand that to understand. I don't have any idea what
Okay.
it contains.
Maybe we can have a special program, an afternoon where we can unpack it. Okay.
So that takes me to another question, you know. So in the book, I think that it's probably fair to say that you're viewing art and beauty as the engine of progress. But others would say, well, the reason for the decline of Islamic civilization is because of lack of adoption of the printing press, or they would say it's because of industrial revolution, it's because of financial problems in the Ottoman Empire, and other causes and other reasons. Why are you so fixated on beauty and art? Is that the true essence? And because for some it seems like beauty is something extra.
Yeah.
You know, zina, it's something aesthetic. But earlier today you said art is not just about something aesthetic, it's about the search for meaning. So can you tell us more?
Well, it goes back to how I look at art and the definition of art, which is the communication of sensation. So, and the two tools, the dual ingredients to creating art is for us ijtihad and tasawwuf, which are the highest standards of excellence when it comes to understanding the disciplines of Islam. Because what is below ijtihad, we call it taqlid, which is to imitate somebody else. But it's the mujtahid who is able to move Islam forward because they are able to add layers of authority, they are able to add layers of interpretation to a body of knowledge. Anything short of that is just going to be imitative. And then that mujtahid cannot exist without a deep spiritual discipline. And that's why I use Imam Ali alayhi salam as the example of that. And that's where the gate to Medina comes. It comes from the hadith, Ana Madinatul Ilm wa Aliyun babuha. I am the city of knowledge and Ali is its gate, alayhi salam. So Imam Ali, for us, Muslims in general, Sunnis and Shias, he represents this dual expertise, if you will. By consensus, he's the most knowledgeable of the companions. And his deep understanding of Islam, he was a mujtahid himself, his adjudication of cases, not to speak of all of the amazing things that he did during the life of the Prophet ﷺ and throughout the khulafa and then his own khilafah before he was assassinated. But also he is almost all of the Sufi orders go back to Imam Ali in their chains of transmission. Not all of them, but most of them.
Because except for one, right?
Well, Abu Bakr.
Abu Bakr.
Yeah, which is one of the branches of the Naqshbandiyya. And that's only because Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu lived for 2 years after the Prophet ﷺ passed, but Imam Ali lived obviously much longer. So I use him as an example that these are the two things that we need. So I understand, obviously I'm expanding the idea of art. When people think of art, they think of like going to a museum and seeing like a painting or something like that. I'm looking at what does it take for a person to do that? Well, for a person to do that, whether you acknowledge the art form, like I'm not really into ballet. I acknowledge it's an art form, but I have a difficulty appreciating it. But there's no doubt if I saw a beautiful performance, wow, I mean, think of all the hours of practicing that required to master those moves, those positions, those, I don't know the terms, that level of expertise, that's the level of expertise that the mujtahid has to have. So really the artist, the mujtahid is our artist. And there is no ijtihad without having a deep anchor to a spiritual practice and tradition. So that's why I use art as that's what's missing, is that anything short of that, we're just imitating. We're just copying something. And we're never going to get out of this rut if we just keep imitating. We need to move forward, and we need to create, and we need to develop, and we need to break out of the things that are hurting us. All the things you mentioned, I acknowledge, but I just see them as circumstantial. They're just, I mean, Islam can thrive in any place, time, or circumstance. So I don't want us to use the dominant power structure as an excuse why because we adopted the printing press. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do that we're losing the target, that there is something beautiful and excellent in Islam that we have not accessed yet.
Brother Idris?
Yeah. So I just want to go back to your high politics and low politics, because there is, for us in this country, high politics, I think I completely agree that we have to really be mindful of it and really support it in whatever way we can. Low politics becomes a bigger issue because politicians, like you said, their main emphasis is to divide and conquer, right? And then as Muslims, we're very emotional, and we get emotions involved in everything. And how do we break free from this emotionality? If you're Pakistani, you're going to do this. If you're Bengali, you're going to do this. If you're Egyptian, you're going to side with this. And you are emotionally completely vested in that. And that creates a lot of divisiveness amongst us. Even though a lot of people, Muslims, were under the umbrella of Islam, Islamology. But in this country where it's all about me and not the community, the divisions become so prominent because of your internal, hey, I am this and I believe in this. How do we get over that? And I think that's our big problem a lot of times in this country.
Well, I'm not a political strategist, but my personal view, which I don't think will be accepted by many people, is that we shouldn't be engaging in the political process at all. And rather, we should be building our own capacity every step of the way. Anything that we need, we should engage with the political process from the point of view is that we are citizens, and we will engage with the authority, and we will always converse with them and find out what the community needs and how can we help using our values and our resources. But thinking that we're going to find the right candidate who's going to, all politicians are professional liars. They all lie, and they're just polling different sound bites. And I mean, it's a completely defunct system. This is my personal view. I'm not saying you have to share this. What I said earlier, that's not my personal view. That's a standard, position about engaging in partisan politics in the name of religion. This is just my personal view, is that we would be better off using our time and effort building our own capacity, building our own institutions that can provide good for the public as well. Because any system of any government, any nation, any state, any republic, it relies on the good of its citizens to create civil society. That's what it's predicated on. Now, so we need to do our share of creating a network of civil society organizations that don't just benefit us, but benefit other people. Now, those institutions would be infused with our values. We'll be open to everyone, we're equitable, we welcome everyone, we treat everyone with respect, we maintain cleanliness, we're polite, so on and so forth. At the same time, we need to be a mirror for those in power or those in office about the values that brought this country to being in the first place, because it seems that none of them talk about it anymore. And they're only talking about the things that divide us. And that's why, I mean, this last summer, I talked about the Federalist Papers, and I was quoting from Madison and Jefferson and Washington. No one talks like this anymore. It's like we forgot all of these things. I was in a class in Atlanta a year or so ago, and somebody asked me a question similar. And I said, who here has heard of the Federalist Papers? And not one person rose their hands.
Yeah.
So that's where we are.
I've read all of them. So.
No, that's fine. Well, here's a lawyer. It's different. I don't know. I'm saying, I'm saying that I don't think that, so by holding to those and constantly talking about them and educating our community about them, and as Americans, these are our values, these are our civic values. There's a lot there that we can help bring people back to. But for me, I think the strategy should be building civil society with our ethics.
I'm going to try to bring us back on track because we got.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
an excellent question. Excellent
I'm not
question.
an expert on that.
But that's not really what today's event is about. But these are wonderful questions. But I want to go back to the Prophet ﷺ, because when we look at the book, we see the green dome, and it's very powerful imagery. I love the metaphor. You know, when many of us think of the Prophet ﷺ, we think of him as a person that appreciated beauty. But in fact, he's much more than that, which both of us talked about on the Eid khutbah, about how he was a source of beauty and a source of art. But I think for most Muslims, we don't really associate the Prophet ﷺ with art. Are we not thinking about him the right way?
I mean, he is the definition of beauty, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the most, most handsome of people, and he was the most beautiful of people, and he was the most gentle of people, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And his natural smell and his natural demeanor, alayhi salatu wasallam, all of the, the hilya that we have hanging there, his physical description, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As Hassan ibn Thabit said, وأجمل منك لم ترى قط عيني وأكمل منك لم تلد النساء خلقت مبرئا من كل عيب كأنك قد خلقت كما تشاء. More beautiful than you my eyes have never seen, and you have been created and brought into being with no blemish. It's as if you chose to be created this way. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these are eyewitnesses, these are the people that lived around him and saw that. And it was his blessed gaze, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to those people that made them the companions. Sometimes we think that the companions are defined as those people who saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, he defines it the opposite. He said they are the people whom the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw. It's as if that blessed gaze of the Prophet ﷺ made them who they were, transformed them. If that's just the gaze, just the nadra, just the one glance of the Prophet ﷺ can reform a person, imagine dedicating your life to following his way. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ فِيكُمْ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. Know that the Prophet ﷺ is with you. He is alive with us because he is alive in his grave, but he is alive with us and through us through the following of his sunnah. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So therefore, if I told you, if I was like this very wealthy person, and I told you I'm going to have a seminar and I'm going to teach you all how to become rich, you guys would come, or some of you would come and you'd pay a lot of money because you'd want to imitate my blueprint to become wealthy. Now here's somebody who's telling us for free, without any gimmicks, I'm going to tell you how to live the good life here and the good life there. I'm going to tell you how to live a beautiful life here and a beautiful life there. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That's the sunnah. So we're all following somebody. We're all imitating somebody. Sometimes we don't want to admit it, but we're all imitating somebody. So why not imitate excellence and beauty? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That's how I look at it.
Rahman?
What's really beautiful about this book, I saw in the first few pages, it's just you're describing your personal journey as you're experiencing these emotional attachments to the various venues or the various places in Egypt that you visit. Now, we're trying to find authenticity in our teachings in Islam, and it seems that you made that decision early on in your life to leave the US, go to this specific place that you feel that where you're going to get this authentic teaching. And as I'm reflecting on that decision, it must have been very difficult on you and your family, just to kind of leave this modernity behind, whatever sacrifices your family made, kind of eventually made just to be here in this country, and then you're trying to find that knowledge that exists in a developing country. Let's say this is how people describe, unfortunately, the places of Islam where true knowledge exists. Now we have this new generation come in, and they're trying to find authenticity as you did, and you essentially making both of you. Is that where it is necessary to go to retrieve that, or if that's and maybe like, this is modernity here, but actual authenticity is somewhere else. And maybe you can too.
No, I don't recommend. I mean, what I did was absolutely crazy. So, because what I don't say in the book is I actually left medical school. So, and my mom is still sore about that because, my mother's a physician. And so, yeah, that was not an easy conversation. I had just gotten married. And my father's like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to go to Yemen and study. He's like, yeah, that's not happening. He's like, you're going to enroll. He said, you're going to enroll in a graduate program right now. And then we're going to figure out what's going to happen. And then I enrolled in the graduate program and I took like a semester leave and a semester abroad. So I spent the first year in Egypt that way. And then I extended it as much as I could. And then I took a couple of years and then I applied for the PhD. So it kind of all worked, but I had to my father made me promise that, I would continue to do graduate work. And alhamdulillah, if it was not for his very like strict guidelines, who knows where I've ended up. So I do not recommend that. Of course, Egypt was and is easy for me because I'm Egyptian. So I mean, the family infrastructure is there. So there was a lot of the things that you alluded to, I actually didn't experience because
It wasn't easy for me.
yeah, I mean, a matter of fact, I could probably tell you had a different. I mean, I lived down the street from my in-laws, and I mean, I was just living in Egypt as an Egyptian, so it was not that difficult. But again, I don't recommend, nor do I argue that that's what people have to do. I needed to do that for me. That was my calling, and I needed to have it. But what we're trying to do is create this authenticity here. And that's the point of carrying this tradition is I'm trying to communicate as best as I can, as much as I can to the community. And I'm sure Imam Rifai feels the same way and Qari Anas is to create this authenticity here so we have our own authentic American Islamic experience. And that is something that I think is very, very important. And I think we're doing all right. I mean, alhamdulillah, we have life here is different. I understand that, but there are many positive aspects of what we have been able to do in such a short time. So I don't recommend that you do that. And now there are other opportunities to learn that didn't exist when I was there. I couldn't learn online. That didn't exist. I had to go. There was no other option. But now, I mean, from your phone even, you can, keep up and you can learn and things like that. So the situation now is very, very different.
We haven't heard much from the ladies. If there's a question. Yes. Yes.
It's just, I'm curious about, like curriculum change and in the first few pages, you talk about how, like most modern outside students, they might study written summaries and compendiums and not the old traditional text. And also you talk about that there's also a gap within the institution where they are more traditional, I guess, than getting to the more modern students. So I was just thinking about, do they not have any curriculum, like committees that like change it, or are they teaching the same curriculum that they have taught, like, 100 years ago? Is there any change like every 5 years or 10 years? Is thing like that happening? That's my first question.
Okay. I don't think the problem is with the curriculum. I think the problem is with the students. So the curriculum is there and it's the same. I mean, obviously the curriculum changes, they might add and subtract. But if you want to study, Hanafi fiqh, I mean, all Hanafis agree that these are the 4 or 5 major steps you have to go through. I mean, that's over 1,000 years old. But the problem is that when the student gets in the mindset that I'm going to study for the test, so there's this culture of, okay, the teacher will create like a little booklet to help you, ibadat, so you help you for the test, i.e., my questions are going to be like this book. So, okay, I'm going to read the book and that's it. So it's more, maybe I should have been more clear. It's not the problem is not the curriculum, because I studied the traditional curriculum, but I didn't have those guides. I bought many of them the first year and I found them to be pointless because I was like, I don't even understand what they're saying is because I'm not taking a test in the traditional sense. So the problem is with the student. The student has to have you can't succeed at this unless you want it and it's part of your being. If it's like you were forced into it and I'm doing it because I didn't get a good grade in high school and this is where I ended up, you're not going to flourish. You have to really, really want it. Really, really wanting it, you will seek out then, I want to know the whole thing. I want to know all the commentaries, all of the extra books. I need to be an expert, so on and so forth. So it's more about the students, not the curriculum.
So I have a tangential question that's related, because there's been a lot of discussion of toxic masculinity and how we raise young men. And then, of course, within our religion, we have this idea of muru'a and futuwa and a healthy kind of masculinity. With art and beauty in mind, sometimes we associate that jamali aspect with femininity, but is there a need for injecting that into how we raise young men?
Injecting what?
Injecting that appreciation for love, for art and a love of beauty. I mean,
Yes, I think it's essential.
is that part of raising strong, confident, young men that have healthy expressions of masculinity?
Yes, it's very, very important because we all have these dual qualities within us. Every man has feminine qualities and every woman will have masculine qualities. And as you get older, oftentimes you migrate towards the opposite of your own gender quality. But our boys they need to learn that part of being a man is learning how to be soft and how to be in touch with that aspect and not to see that as a diminishing of masculinity.
That's part of their like mizaj or their
Yes, and that's why Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, she encouraged people to learn poetry because it softens the heart, it softens the tongue. So yes, they need to learn, and traditionally learning music and meter and poetry was part of the traditional curriculum, even in the West.
Yes.
Of the quadrivium, part of it was learning music. So that's very, very important. And you want boys to learn how to dress well, how to respect women, how to say a nice word, but also to be, stern when they need to be stern and to stand up when they need to stand up. But the Prophet ﷺ, his grandkids would jump on his back and stuff when he was in prayer. He was the greatest of creators, no man greater than the Prophet ﷺ. So, but he was soft, or, he would be intimate with his wife. And we even have descriptions of how he would kiss his wife in a very intimate way, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, even when he was fasting, which we can't do, but, he could do. Or how they would be intimate in bed and he would want to stand up and pray, and how he would, let his wife touch him while he was standing, but remove her body part when he was making sujood. I mean, there are these little intimate details of the Prophet ﷺ to show us that this is part of being a man,
Right.
but in the right context, in the right situation. Yeah.
Giving touch as a love language and giving in respect.
And he had nickname. He would call her Aish, not Aisha. And he said to her, I know when you're mad at me. And she said, how do you know? I said, when you're happy with me, you said, by the Lord of Muhammad. But when you're mad at me, you say by the Lord of Ibrahim.
We have that. You guys know.
But wait, there's more to it.
Sure.
And then what did she respond? She laughed. She's like, yes. She's like, but I only leave your name by my tongue, meaning it's always in my heart. So these intimate exchanges show you that this is what being a man is like, and what, for a woman as well. But to your question, I think it's very, very important for boys to have an appreciation of beauty and art. Yeah. Sorry, you had a continuation.
Did I cut you off?
As well as the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How does this relate to the art of Islam if one, as you say, about the pages here, it's not about an external object, but like the people's mindset?
Well, the ihsan part comes back to our belief that we have a nafs, and our nafs, which is our, rational, articulating, communicating part of us that makes us us. The nafs is of different levels or can be of different types. And if you leave your nafs and you just give in, even if outwardly you practice Islam, but you haven't attended to that, then your nafs will constantly urge you to do wrong things. And then therefore you will be the worst version of yourself. But if you are constantly, all of us, if we're constantly working on ourselves, then we are trying to be the best versions of ourselves. And then we tap into that inner spiritual strength that ihsan, gives us. And that's why part of the gate to Medina is you can't access that unless you have a deep spiritual practice. Acknowledging, yes, I'm weak. Yes, I have a nafs. I need to get it under control, and I need to constantly polish it, constantly be good at it. And this is where I use art the most in the book, is that I use Marcel Proust's concept of involuntary memory. And Marcel Proust's theory is that art, traditional art, is the artist finding an object, which is his art, which links him back to a memory that he lost. And therefore, through the creation of art, the artist can keep going or lives on. So our object is the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the tool, because what are we remembering? It's even called remembering, dhikr. What are we remembering? We're remembering that memory which we forgot, which was when we testified to the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, alastu bi rabbikum bala shahidna. So therefore, the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our artistic tool that calls forth from our subconscious that memory which all humanity has that we forgot. And by constantly remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we become more aware of that. And in that process, we improve our nafs. We are the best versions of ourselves. If we couple that with a dedication to creativity and this concept of excellence, ijtihad, then we are experiencing the art of Islam.
Inshallah.
So beautiful conversation, but I want to take back to get to Medina. When Prophet ﷺ went from Mecca to Medina, he went as the Prophet of Allah, and he created Islam and Muslims. And when he left this world, there was no Shia, Sunni, Ahmadi, or Barkat. Right? And I think, of course, at ICCP, we kind of go over that division sort of lines. What do you think, or what would be suggestions in terms of getting to this line somehow, I would not say ways, but at least not to be a focal point for the almost 2 billion Muslims to separate themselves? Because if the Prophet didn't tell us that, didn't make the differentiation, why are we doing it? And I also think, of course, ICCP, we try to do something, and I also believe that this Islamic or Muslim unity will possibly start from this part of the world.
Sure.
We are, I think, alhamdulillah, with Allah's grace, somehow better equipped in many ways, educationally, financially, and the society that is democratic society. I want to have your thoughts, and let us be the ambassador of all.
So before Dr. Tariq answers, it's related to a question that I wanted to ask. It's something from your book. You say the story of yesterday need not be the story of tomorrow. I actually put it in my notes because I like it. I'm gonna steal it shamelessly.
Please.
I'll give you credit, inshallah.
No.
The journey ahead.
Good artists borrow, great artists steal.
Right.
So you steal. I give you permission.
Imitate. It's
This
not
is
steal.
this
It's
is halal theft.
taqleed.
Halal theft.
Taqleed.
Halal
You
theft.
talked about taqleed. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Allah,
Okay.
Allah.
So the journey ahead is open and bright if we choose art over sentimentality. So is art, to connect with Brother Sultan's question, is art something that Muslims can coalesce, together around? That we can unify?
I just want to find the quote. I think it's before I quote Lord of the Rings. Well, I'll find it. It's hard to find it while I'm talking. Anyway, so here's my raw, honest feedback about Muslim unity. So first of all, Muslim unity is something that we all have to be dedicated to, because Allah tells us in the Quran that we're one ummah. So, I mean, it's like interfaith. For me, it's a first principle, and we have to constantly be dedicated to it, no matter how difficult it is. That being said, this is where I think the difficulties are. There are two, in my experience, this is experience like on the ground. This is not like some theoretical thing. The first difficulty is that you cannot have unity amongst the different sects if politics is always going to be involved. So my experience is that that's the issue, is that it's not the sectarian issue, it's the political issue, especially in certain parts of the world. And there is a constant, tension and accusations, and I don't want to get into to the details, but especially when it comes to Sunni Shia relations, it's always, as I said just a minute ago, it's like right there in the background is the political consideration. So if we are going to constantly be wedded to that, then we're not going to get anywhere. The second thing is the belief that each side has, whether they publicize it or not, is I am right and you are wrong, and therefore I have to spread what is right. I was talking to somebody very senior in a Muslim majority nation which shall remain nameless, and this person shall remain nameless. And I remember him saying, look, we don't have any problems with the Shia, but we just don't want them here. In other words, why are they always trying to come and establish, because it's a Sunni country, why are they wanting to establish a Husseiniya? It's not going to work. And I remember during the Morsi's year in office in Egypt, there were these attempts to establish these Husseiniyyas in Egypt. It's never going to work, not in a country like Egypt. Egypt is 155% Muslim, Sunni Muslim. I mean, it's never going to happen. It's part of the identity, the culture of Egypt. This is the problem, because this stems from I'm right, you're wrong.
Yes.
So Al-Azhar, we look at it from the non-political point of view. And since the 1950s, there's been a very long conversation with many of the Shia authorities, what we call a taqarub, to bring the sects together. And there was a common publication called Majallatul Islam. It was published for several decades, and there were Sunni and Shia authors. And it was a very, very positive effort, but there are a couple of things to note. The first thing is we consider the Shia, as I mentioned in the khutbah today, a school of law. There are some differences, yes, but they are Muslims, there's no doubt about that. The other problem, and then they would consider us the same way. The other problem is that we discovered, we being the Azhar, not me, but that rarely do these conversations go down to the grassroots. So amongst the leaders, yes, we share the same idea. We've come to a big reconciliation. How about, all of the people on the minbar that are spewing all of this hatred and division? Where are they, or didn't they get the memo? And that's what I've discovered. Many of my, Sunni colleagues have no idea about what I just said, and many of my Shia friends and colleagues have no idea about what I just said, which proves that this hasn't been able to go down to the grassroots. Unless that becomes part of the teaching and remove this rhetoric of hatred, we're never going to be able to make this kind of difference.
So let's close on, that's very hard to take a question now. We live within the political system. I'm sorry, brothers and sisters, all the questions are about politics. I respectfully, I don't want to.
The book is not about politics at all, yeah.
Respectfully. So it's not Dr. Tarek's fault, it's my fault. Yes, is there a question here that's not about politics? Okay. It's my fault. Everybody can blame it on me. So, but and then after that we're gonna
the sister,
close,
you had a question?
the sister, yeah.
Yeah.
And then after that I have a question that we'll close on, inshallah.
Alaikum assalam.
First time we have two kind of rules or worlds that kind of govern our society. We have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's word in the Quran, but we also have Sharia law, which nowadays as the entire world is kind of merging together. And politics is a huge form of debate, especially within Muslim countries themselves. And I feel over the time, or the course of the time, the word of Allah and Sharia law and the politics have merged together, and there's no line to draw between them and stuff like that. So my question is, how do we decipher between what is actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's word and what is the law that men have made? Because over time the two have merged, and we can't really tell
What do you mean they've merged? What do you mean they have merged?
The death penalty for apostasy, so leaving Islam and stuff like that.
There is no death penalty in the Sharia for apostasy. No.
A lot of
I heard. Yeah, I've heard a lot of things too. I also heard that the moon landing didn't last, and I heard that Elvis is still alive. I heard a lot of things. But there is no, for just leaving Islam, there is no death penalty. But go ahead. Just I wanted to correct that. What do you mean by merged?
What actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's word and what Sharia law like is, and how do we decide like how each should be like how each individual should be judged by like what like version and what like context is.
Well, first of all, you have to understand that Islamic law covers every aspect of a human being's life. So there are things that are personal and there are things that are public. There are things that are family. There are things that relate to inheritance. There are things that relate to business transactions, courts, torts, so on and so forth. So the next thing is we have to understand is that there are different systems of law depending on where we are. If you're in a Muslim majority country, this question is different than if you are a minority Muslim community like we are. So in our case, all that matters for us is that we can pray 5 times a day, we can pray Friday prayer, we have access to halal food, we can marry and divorce according to the Quran and Sunnah, and we can bury our dead according to the Quran and Sunnah. If we have that as a minority community, then what we have is called Darul Islam, that we live in an Islamic state. As far as the secular law is out there is concerned, we have an obligation to follow it. If there is something that's unconstitutional or something that's immoral, we have the right to assemble to talk about it and to voice our opinion in this country. In the Muslim majority world, you have to understand that because the reason I asked you what you meant is because I think this is what you're probably getting at, is that there's a common misconception that the laws of Muslim majority countries are not Islamic. That's not true. They are completely Islamic, but they've been codified. So if you really are interested, you can read my thesis from Princeton, because this is what I did. I talked about the codification of personal status law in Egypt to show how Islamic law between the 1850s and the 1950s, in Egypt as an example, how it was taken from the canons of pure Islamic law and rewritten in modern legal codes compatible with Islamic law, buttressed by the dalil, the Quran and Sunnah of Islamic law, but written in a way, the way that modern legal codes are written. This has led to a very big misconception, especially amongst extremist Muslims, that these countries are not governing by Islamic law. That's not true. And most Islamic majority countries have different bodies, they have different names, whose job is to make sure and to ensure that there is no law that has been codified that violates the tenets of the Sharia. And there is a legal mechanism to rectify that. In Iran, they have one. I mean, in Kuwait, I met the guy who does it. In Egypt, we have Al-Mahkama Dusturiya Al-Ulya, the High Constitutional Court. And I have their journal. You can read their proceedings, and they will review a law if it's something that is presented to the court as being in violation of Islamic law. So Islamic law is not like some boogeyman thing, this like Sharia law thing that people are taught. It's fool. I studied Sharia at Princeton. I mean, it's foolish what they're saying. How you pray, how you wash your bum. Who cares about that? We have a certain hadith about that. We're free. I can do in the bathroom what I want. That's Sharia law too. So there are some aspects of Sharia law that can't be applied because the conditions for them don't be. We're fine with that. Then they're suspended. That's fine. So on and so forth.
I think what this session teaches us is maybe we need to have another session
about politics.
About politics, and so because there's a lot of interest. Inshallah.
It would be shared. Would it be possible for you to narrate this for us? So in format, audible, so we can, some of us, it's hard for us to read text based on something,
Maybe.
Audiobook.
And that would be the best gift.
Maybe. The best gift? Okay.
Inshallah. MashaAllah. And now we have AI that can, we can get our tech team on that. Okay. Inshallah, we'll conclude with Brother Mohsen, please.
Okay, thank you so very much for doing this, Tarek. But I'd like to make a comment and ask a question. Both Imam Rifai and yourself referred to the beauty, aspects of beauty of Islam. And I think that in this multicultural, multi-religious, multinational world that we live in the US, the beauty of Islam needs to be projected much more aggressively, particularly amongst the young amongst us who will carry the torch forward. The culture of Islam, the calligraphy of Islam,
the poetry of Islam. We have a poet here, Miraj's son, right? Poet. Some people, we need to bring them to the fore, to be able to project and live in Islam. Calligraphy, social behavior, and so on. Christian world, there's a lot of it, I might say, but we have to go back to the Persian culture, in Iranian, may Allah protect them. They have done so much, including inventing the algorithm, if I'm right. So I think there has to be a way in which we propagate the beauty of Islam to our younger folk, and that's an obligation all of us have in the masjid as well as in our homes.
Yes, I mean, I hope that especially the second half of the book would inspire people to explore within themselves those type of artistic inclinations that they have, and to feel empowered to express them, and to feel powered to act on them, and to use the beauty that our deen has, and the beauty of the specific of the Prophet ﷺ, to infuse our art and our expressions with that. And this type of creativity is absolutely essential. I mean, the Prophet ﷺ had a mimbar in the mosque for Hassan ibn Thabit, a special poet's mimbar, in the mosque. So think about it, there were over 300 of the companions, men and women, that sang poetry in praise of the Prophet ﷺ in the masjid. So, we have to be very total in how we think about our tradition, that these type of artistic expressions is part of our traditions, part of our essence, part of our excellence, how we dress and how we carry ourselves and how we express the spoken word, the written word, so on and so forth. And, other than a few art forms that might be quote unquote questionable, I mean, there's no limitation to the type of art that Muslims were involved with in the past and continue to be in charged with. And hopefully Allah will bless us with a space on the campus where we can congregate young people more and encourage this type of artistic expression. Conclude? Okay. I guess that's it. Is it time for Aisha? Yeah, okay. So we'll end here. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Mawlana Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi.